My name is Greg McIsaac. I'm a 40-year resident of West Vancouver and the Vice President of the Ambleside and Dunderave Residents Association. My family grew up here. My kids, they now live in Port Moody, but they don't live here in West Vancouver. I will be the moderator this evening. Just a little bit of background. I'm a chartered accountant by training, and my last full-time position was as Chief Financial Officer of HSBC Canada. I got involved in ADRA a number of years ago due to concerns I had with the way West Vancouver was being developed with what often appeared to be ad hoc zoning. The association, being Ambleside, Dunderave and Residents Association, was incorporated as long ago as 1979, and its main goal is to try and ensure that residents of Ambleside and Dunderave are informed about issues that are likely to impact them, especially regarding protecting the character of our neighbourhoods and trying to ensure that any official community plan or local area plan actually reflects the vision of residents. We meet regularly with councillors and the mayor and with senior district staff. As many of you know, the new council has embarked on a long-promised journey to formalise a local area plan for Ambleside. And that's the map there. The prescribed area is defined largely as an area bounded by Inglewood in the north, the waterfront in the south, 23rd Street in the west, and 13th Street in the east. That's the area that they're talking about a local area plan for. Over the last 3 months, the local area plan is going to define for the future the types and heights of buildings that can be built and where and in the prescribed area they can be built. The area today is composed of a commercial district, an apartment district, and single-family home district that has a few townhomes and duplexes. Over the last 3 months, staff led by David Hawkins of the Planning Department have presented at focus groups 3 possible visions for Ambleside to elicit discussion and feedback from residents. They are not set in stone. Any or none of these may be what emerges of the local area plan. Staff will report to council the feedback from the focus groups and other feedback received by emails and letters to council. In July, the council will determine the next steps in this process. The 3 possible visions are designed around the goal of adding 1,000 to 1,200 additional housing units to Ambleside, which is around 2,500 to 3,000 people. This is accomplished by adding significant density in the form of different mixes of apartment towers and townhomes between 5 and 9 stories high. ADRA have communicated to our mayor and council our concerns with all these visions regarding the density, green space, new corridors, parking, traffic, walkability, etc. Fully recognising that some change is desirable and inevitable. Of course, it is not up to ADRA to decide the future, but residents themselves along with the duly elected mayor and council. Council will, of course, now have to take account of possible developments in Squamish Nation lands in West Vancouver. I believe they own 350 acres in both North and West Vancouver. The province's recent announcement of their intent to set housing targets for West Vancouver and 9 other municipalities, and the plan in the fall to introduce legislation to rezone all single-family lots to fourplexes. Tonight, we're not going to review the visions specifically. They're available on the West Vancouverite website and the district website. More information is also available on ADRA's website, and the presentations from tonight will be posted there. We are, though, going to hear tonight from 3 individuals who care deeply about our community and its development. They have all invested a great deal of time in considering the future of West Vancouver. After each speaker, there will be time for specific questions related to their presentation, and at the end we'll have time for general questions. So the introduction to the speakers. The speakers tonight are Klaus Jensen, President of Civics, who will cover off the bigger picture, how West Vancouver is meeting and exceeding housing targets. Nancy Smeal is going to speak. She is the vice chair, or was the vice chair of the Neighbourhood Character Working Group, who covered in its final report and recommendations that dealt with the size, character and types of housing that can be built today in single-family lots. Last but not least, with Maureen O'Brien, Executive Director of the Ambleside Business Improvement Association, who will tell us about the results of their Imagine Ambleside initiative that received input from over 1,000 residents, a vision for the future of the Ambleside Commercial District. So without further ado, I am going to introduce Klaus Jensen. Klaus is a 50-year resident of West Vancouver. 13 years old, he had a job cleaning offices. At 16, he started a business. Then completed an MBA at the University of Manitoba and qualified as a chartered accountant. After working as an economic analyst and being a president of a public company, he went on to own a trucking company for 30 years with a staff of 400. Over the last few years, he got more involved in municipal affairs, founding Civics, which over the last 2 years has elicited feedback from residents on many local issues through polling and presenting these results to council. He ran for council in the last election, gaining considerable support. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Klaus, who will talk to us on this topic. Thanks. Over to you. Yeah.
There we go. I need my utensils. And I'm going to go really quickly. See? Too loud? Technical services, please. Say hi to my son, Neil. I wouldn't even know where the switches are. All right, how's that? More? Better? Okay. All right. He's also pulled a fast one on me. I had my notes made in Claus fashion, which is old-fashioned, and he decided to modernize them, but unfortunately I've not seen it before. So if I stumble, it's his fault. Thanks, Graham. I am going to cover off, see, this is what I mean. Here we go. I'm going to cover off 4 things. Decision-making principles. Then housing inventory, both built and unbuilt, because unbuilt means you can build it without any rezoning whatsoever. Community amenity contributions, CACs, if we have time. And then affordable housing, again, if we have time. Depends how well I do this. So the key takeaway from my background is that I have 40 years of business experience with decision making, large corporations, small business, not-for-profits. First of all, what are the elements of strategic decision making? Here's the model that I've used for many times. You ask these 3 questions. Where do you want to go? The goal, the objective. By when? When do you want to reach your goal? And how do you know that you have objectively arrived, i.e., whatever that measure is? Then there is, where are you now? Sort of a SWOT analysis. And then strategically, how are you going to get from here to there? And then, very importantly, what are the feedback loops for strategic elements? Now we want to apply this decision-making model to the official community plan housing targets and also population targets. Please note, this is not a political discussion about 54,000 is right or wrong. We're simply saying, here's the official community plan, and this is what's being done to meet that plan. This is from the also from the OCP, and this number down here is 22,000. And that is the number of housing units that planning is planning to have. So we're just going to run through these. These are not specifics. This is an example of how you apply the model to this housing objective. So where do you want to go? 22,000 housing units. How do you know if you've arrived? It must be objective and measurable. When? We picked the date, 30th of June, 2041. So where are we today? We've got, whoops, sorry, pressed the wrong button. We've got 17,800 built. We have a totally unknown, unbuilt, but zoned for housing units. Strategically, how we're going to get from here to there? Well, we're going to ensure There's 4 steps. We're going to ensure, and again, this is example. This is not what I'm saying it should be. This is an example. Ensure we have the next 3 years, which is 650 units of zone for housing, but unbuilt land always available. If we don't have land to build on, we can't meet our targets. 2, rezoning expires unless it's built within 3 years. This is a suggestion. Right now, for example, I think it's Rogers Creek was approved for 1,200 units or something like that, and I think so far it's less than 150 built. So we go granting rezoning, but we don't have any requirements for building. Reallocate staff as required from rezoning focus to permits focus, like get the bloody building permits out in a timely manner. Issue building permits within 60 days. If inspections or permits are delayed, then the district is fined $5,000. You say, well, you know, that's kind of harsh. It's really in an attempt to get staff accountable, because if they have to pay out $500,000 a year in fines, well, some heads are going to rattle, we hope. The feedback loop. Inventory of land where 650 housing units can be built in the next 3 years. So we have a tally. And we look at it monthly. Are we on target? Are we on target? No? Yes? And then we need to know the number. This is the key one. Our goal is to get to 22,000 housing units. Well, we better be tracking this monthly to see whether or not we're building. Are we on track? Now, the district, we've looked, it does not have a perpetual inventory of zoned for housing, but unbuilt. ADRA had questions. Did I get this wrong? ADRA had questions regarding inventory and had the discussion with District of West Van staff. In the meantime, from publicly available information, I created a housing inventory model for West Vancouver to track land zoned for housing but unbuilt. ADRA has sent a copy of this to planning. Now, just for clarity here, some of the housing data used in the inventory model is unavailable to the public. So we used estimates, but we've told in the model, we've said where we got the estimate. Help from planning has also been requested. The following graph really summarizes hundreds of data points. Now, this really is it. The bottom starts at 17,000 and goes up to 22,000. So this is our target built units, not approved units, because you can't live in approved units. You can only live in built units. This graphs built units plus not built units, but currently zoned for housing. So you can see in 2023, we have a huge gap here of, there's no reason we can't build. We don't need council's help in this at all. This is all, get a building permit, get it done. And so really, I guess many municipalities have been blamed, well, you take too long to get rezoning, blah, 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 blah. Well, there's lots of zoning available. We got to get it built. Over here is simply an additional sort of bump. These are all the currently known applications. The biggest single one is Cypress, so 3,700. So we can see that this is where we want to be, and this is where we could possibly end up. I can't read that now. At 31,000 or so housing units, which is 50% more than our target. I'm going to skip this one because it's got too many numbers. This one I put up. So if everything that's currently zoned plus what's currently in the pipe only in 2023, we could end up with 77,000 people. That excludes 6,000 projected people from the Capilano Reserve First Nations And so we would end up with 83,000 population. So, conclusion. The district can meet its 2041 housing targets based on land zone for housing units today. The issue is getting housing units built. So, the district does not need to rezone 3,700 units at Cypress Village. There is no need to add 1,200 housing units for Ambleside local area plan. This is the nitty-gritty of it. Won't even show you. And this is page 1 of the model. Page 2 down here is just to illustrate. This is the ones where we have the, for example, Cypress Village is down here. So I think it's quite thorough. So we've shown that West Van currently has land zoned to build housing far in excess than what that blue line required. I think many of you may have a graph. So that blue line is the target. That's the goal. Every year we gotta be on target. So the issue is not being built. Now the elephant in the room is not only must housing be built, it must also be affordable, and I'm going to address that if I don't run out of time. Graham, how much time do I have? I didn't start my clock. 10 minutes, all right. So, recently, I had an epiphany about why housing is not being built on currently zoned residential land. I don't have many epiphanies just because I'm just not that bright. Now, I'm going to ask you this question though. Is it possible it has something to do with CACs, the community amenity contributions? Let me tell you a bit more about CACs. What is it? What's the real bargain? How is it calculated? And what about the, oh, it's just 48 for 54 million in the past. So what is it? It is a legal form of bribery. Legal, please note, it's legal. And the bribe is basically this. Council, please approve this densification, rezoning, whatever you will, and in exchange, we will give you X zillions of dollars. Some might say it's a bargain, but if you tried to do that, that would be illegal. It's okay to do the other one legally. No clue about. There must be some lawyers who can explain that. So what's the real bargain here? So the real bargain is your council decides every time they get CACs, they're selling a slice of West Vancouver's soul. 1. 2, they are selling part of your quality of life for money. I mean?
That's politicking. Sorry, excuse me, can we let the speaker speak, please? Finish his part, to answer my question.
All right. So, how's it calculated? Fundamentally, you take the value of the land today, and then you estimate what the land will be once it's rezoned, and 75% is supposedly paid as a CAC. And it's a song and a dance. It has to be negotiated. The district can't demand the money because that's illegal. So what ends up is the developer said, well, how about if we do this? Now, just so you know, the CACs are treated as revenue on the financial statements. Here, for example, is 2020 note 15 on the financial statements. And you can see this particular one, there is $10 million for the extra floors at Gateway. That's included in the revenue of the district. Now the Gateway residents in total, the total CACs for 31 million, about 20 million in cash and 10 million in kind. And that works out to about 105,000 per housing unit, per unit. So here's a rhetorical question of sorts. Why are district staff and councillors promoting densification like the 1,200 more housing units in the Ambleside LAP and the 3,700 in Cypress? Hint, follow the money. collected about $1 billion over the years in CACs. Now, based on the gateway CAC per unit, here's how much CACs are on the table. So, Ambleside. If Ambleside gets approved for 1,200 units, approximately, very approximately, there will be $126 million of CACs flowing to the district over the years. If Cypress Village is approved, 3,700, that would be $389 million worth of CACs. Most of those would be in kind. Conclusion, West Van can meet its housing targets based on land zone for housing units today. The issue is roadblock is getting housing units built. So, District of West Vancouver does not need to rezone 3,700 units in Cypress, nor the 1,200 units that they want to put in Ambleside. Now, how much time do I have? 5 minutes. All right, well, we might get it. So I'm going to make this bold statement, which is to get your attention. And I say it, every home in Canada is affordable. Let's just leave it for there now. Stew on it for a little bit. Let me walk you through it. Now this is a council report that was prepared for council for the Clyde Avenue micro-units. The word affordable appears 23 times in this council report. But it is, and it's stated as a fact, but it's not defined. Now, taken from the council report, more affordable than what? So in other words, we have this virtue signaling in here, it's more affordable. Well, who knows what more affordable is? Well, I'm going to tell you what people think. We did a survey, and I can't read, remember, about 500 people responded, and 22% of people believe that affordable has to be less than $800 a month. Right? And you run all through the numbers. So down here, 55% say that to be affordable, rent has to be less than $1,100 per month. Now, one of the justifications for approving Gateway was to provide affordable housing. Clearly, again, undefined. Here are the current rents that are being promoted by Gateway. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. So 1 bedroom, $3,300. 2 bedroom, $4,500. 3 bedrooms, and so on. Now, according to the Canadian Housing Mortgage Corporation, housing is considered affordable if the housing expense is 30% or less of before tax income. So here's a little table, rent per month, and then affordable. So $1,100 per month rent is affordable to somebody who makes more than $44,000 before taxes per year. The Clyde Avenue micro units, we guesstimated that $2,100 is going to be the rent. That means that to be affordable, the occupant, because most of them will be single, will need to make $84,000 a year. And this part of the sales pitch was that this was for people who worked in retail and so on. I somehow doubt that that's going to need it. And then there's the single bedroom at Gateway. You need to make $132,000 a year in order for it to be affordable. So, here's my out. Every home in Canada is affordable depending on household income. So, I would urge you, please, to question any statement where the words more could be in there. Affordable housing is used without an income modifier because it's absolutely meaningless. Meaningless. We need to have some kind of modifier. This is affordable for people whose gross income is less than 36,000 or is less than 85,000. Affordable on its own makes no sense whatsoever when you're describing rental. So, going back to the sort of the key graph, that's the goal of housing built, not rezoned, but built. You know, bricks and mortar, built, to be occupied. Here we are in 2023, we have about 50% more inventory of land that's currently zoned for housing, but it's not being built. And I think that's it for now.
So we have about 10 minutes with a roving microphone. Someone who's with a roving microphone. The roving microphone, so if anyone has got any questions, hear me? Anyone with any questions, just put their hand up and we'll bring the microphone to you. This gentleman over here. No, well, you can do your video. Judy, are you going to do the, you can go, I don't know. You do, just take
Go and take
this
it.
gentleman here. There, right there.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
A young one. Well, where is all of this land that in that delta from the blue to the red that is currently there, and therefore is it also suitable for the types of buildings? I mean, ironically, here we are in a medium density facility that probably was, relatively new and not, they probably knocked down some bunch of single family homes being
All right.
at some point.
So-
I'm just curious where I've
Yeah.
lived in West End.
So
most of my
I
life.
had that detail, but to save time, I didn't put it in. So that would include current and vacant land. It would include families where they could put in laneway houses. It would include units that could be built legally as secondary suites. Right? It would include a zone but unbuilt, for example, Rogers Creek. Right? They have it all zoned, but they're not building it, so it would be included in there. So the difference between what they've built and the amount of units zoned, that would be included. And then there's, believe it or not, there's a slew of duplex applications and fourplex applications that are you can find them actually on the district's website. So this physically all exists. And we're not talking about tearing down anything. Oh, the one part I missed, I guess we're going to learn about. Last year, we changed the zoning for West Vancouver, huge zoning change, and now there are many, many properties that can be subdivided. So half of those lots, so if there's say 3,000 lots like that, well, there are 1,500 potential lots that are ready for going. You don't need to go to council, you just file a building permit because it's in the zoning. Right? So you don't need you don't need council. That answer?
Yeah, I mean, that some of that design is already incorporated in the three visions from city. Anyway, right, townhomes and things like that, those are the three options that they're presenting for the LEDs.
Largely, sorry if I may just answer, largely speaking, what's in those three options?
Yeah.
It's rezoning. It's actually, it does involve rezoning. It's not already zoned for those types of properties in this state. Any other question over there?
Well, you may be some here. What would be the incentive for a property owner to expend the additional amount of money to put additional facilities on his property or her property? What's the incentive and where does the money come from when you're building something as a coach house or whatever and expecting or anticipating a renter? I don't understand how we can forecast building happening, and perhaps is that the reason why the building that is permissible is not happening?
Well, I think you answered your own question. Clearly, many people have the ability to subdivide or put a laneway house in or put in a secondary suite, and they choose not to, some of them on principle, and some of them, they've looked at the arithmetic, and I think they've concluded that it isn't economical to do that, especially when you build today, and then as a landlord, as a residential landlord, you're restricted to whatever it is, 2% increases per year, even though property tax is going up 5, 6, 7, utilities are going up, it's about 6.5 or something like that. So you're right. On the other hand, if you look at Gateway, I think they have a building and a quarter that's sitting vacant. Right? People either can't afford to rent it, or they don't like the looks of it, or whatever. But for the district to go out and approve more rezoning in the hopes that that rezoning will result in building, the rezoning needs to have some teeth so that people will build, or there has to be some serious punishment. I don't know whether you double the property taxes for a while until the place is built. So you give them free 2 years, and then after 2 years, property taxes double or triple to motivate. So,
Question over here.
Yeah, I just had a question about if you no longer need a permit to put in a secondary suite or a laneway home,
no, you need a building permit.
but you don't need to be rezoned.
Correct.
Okay, so if you have that secondary suite or the coach home, are you responsible then for paying extra water, electrical, sewage, garbage, et cetera, that's gonna add to an already sort of strained system in West Van? We haven't done
Yes.
a huge amount of upgrades.
The one of the advantages of the district going on a metered water basis is that's the basis for actual water consumption. So if all of a sudden you double the number of people in the house, at least all of the water will be charged for. And then in December, they take your consumption, I think it's December, and that's how they determine your sewage charge, the sewage discharge rates for the rest. And then you get to pay $450 a year for a secondary suite, which incidentally, Gateway doesn't have to pay.
Any other questions? No? More questions? Probably more questions. Right. With that, we'll move on to, thank you very much, Klaus, I appreciate that. We'll move on to our next speaker, who is Nancy Smeal. Nancy is a lifelong resident of West Vancouver and was pleased to be able to raise her children and become the third generation graduates of West Vancouver High. She retired from a career in education in North Vancouver in 2010, where she was a secondary teacher, counselor, and administrator. Since retirement, she has been involved in the 2010 Olympics and the West Vancouver Community Society, among other endeavors. Between 2018 and 2021, Nancy was a member and the vice chair of the Neighbourhood Character Working Group, where the participants worked tirelessly to understand the complex concept of neighbourhood character in a context of change. The working group was proud to produce a report with recommendations that were unanimously approved by the Mayor and Council at the time and are now being implemented. So over to Nancy to tell us more about this. Thank you. Okay, you want this testing, yeah, that's what.
Okay, thank you, Graham, and full confession, I am not a tech person. I have never made up a PowerPoint in my life. I haven't been able to do so. So I was fortunate to find one from 2020. I'm rejiggered it a bit, and you will see that the modifications are absolutely amateur. Hence, you're going to be listening to me a lot, but I'll do my best. So first of all, I'm going to give some of my impressions. I grew up in both Ambleside and Dunderave, and I'm an almost lifetime member of West Vancouver. A little history for any of you who actually grew up here or worked here for a long time. My parents actually met in Helen Bach's class, so I'm sure some of you can relate to that. So as I said, I have fond memories of attending grade 1 at Irwin Park, and again, a little history here. Irwin Park was a My sister and I, and remember, we were very young at this time, ran around in the streets, played in the creeks, played with our friends, and one of my best friends was Sheila Monroe, who is the daughter of Alice. And again, historically, if you want, she wrote a book called Growing Up with Alice, and it talks about her growing up in Dunderave. There's a picture of her on her front porch, and my sister and I are in that photo. So it was a wonderful place to grow up. When we moved to Dunderave, to Ambleside, I went to Ridgeview. Again, we ran around like crazy, things you don't see now. We were free on the streets, dogs running around, kids running around. Those were great days. And it's great, unfortunately. We actually wandered down to Ambleside on our own, swam on the beach, went to Park Royal. It was very different times then. But we have to remember that was then and this is now. Culture has changed, society has changed, not just West Vancouver. So what we had growing up is not the way that things actually happen now. Okay, so when I was ready to raise a family, I chose West Van. I knew it was a great place to bring up kids, that they had the advantage of all of our natural resources, going to the beach, going to the mall, a fabulous community center, good schools. And when they left, and we were in Dunderave at that time, I have to say I didn't know my neighborhood anymore. More than half of the houses had been sold, rebuilt, sold again, didn't know the neighbors, didn't know the houses. I just lost connection with the neighborhood. So I did sell and I moved to Evelyn, and that's an interesting concept too. But I'm still in West Vancouver. And then when I saw the advertisement for applications for the Neighborhood Character Working Group, I applied right away. I thought this is one thing that I would really like to look at. And I feel very pleased that I worked with such an informed, committed, and goal-oriented group. We had an amazing group that included 9 citizens, 2 staff, and 1 counselor, Counselor Lambert. Amongst our group as well was an architect, a couple of builders, Steve Nichols, who was the former city planner, and a group of just interested citizens, very open-minded and forward-thinking, but reasonable with what is now is good, and that's something to keep in mind too. The representatives of the working group came from different communities. It was an excellent choice, whoever made the choice. So from Portia Bay right through to the British Properties, there was somebody from every area. We were given the mandate to work under, and I'll just go through that, to recommend changes to West Vancouver regulations, guidelines, and policies to protect and enhance neighborhood character and protect heritage for the benefit of the residents. Our mandate was for single-family homes, and that was difficult to stick to because there are multifamily homes. There was a lot of discussion about duplexes, about townhouses, about row houses, but we were working in single-family homes, or single-family zones, so we dealt mostly with the single-family concept. However, I will say the district is working on a proposal, and it is very good. I hope we have seen it. For coach houses and for duplexes and regulations to make them fit in, I think, with the neighborhood and with the type of homes that we like to see in West Vancouver. So we met weekly, bi-weekly. We had daily workshops from September 18 till October 2020. Another note on that, the pandemic was actually officially announced during one of our meetings. Somebody looked on their phones and said it's now a pandemic. So that will kind of put a little bit of focus into what it was like. We had many rounds of engagement, and I will go over that in a minute. We also were given guiding principles that we were to encourage RS zoned, that's primarily single-family neighborhoods, to maintain a detached single-house family appearance. We were to reflect the uniqueness of West Vancouver's differing neighborhoods. There are 11 or 13 neighborhoods in West Vancouver, loosely defined, but every neighborhood is different. We were to focus on houses as homes rather than as development opportunities. We were also always conscious of reducing the negative impacts of construction on the environment. Actually, I'm gonna go back. We spent a lot of time brainstorming what is neighborhood character. And according to the OCP, it is a sense of place and its distinct aspects that cause a specific area to be familiar to the people associated with it and recognizable from other areas. Some other definitions include the look and feel of an area, qualities that make one neighborhood distinct from another, a range of physical components including the built environment, architectural style, street width and layout, along with fence height and style. So a lot of factors there, but there is really no specific definition. We would sometimes come to meetings with a question about a problematic house, because we were always thinking, what is neighborhood character? What makes this place stick out? And we would come and take a look at it. Is it out of scale with the neighborhood? Is it out of scale with the lot? Is it visible bulk? And that is a very important term, visible. Is it an imposing facade and so on? So rather than using a term monster house, we were trying to look at what particularly made a house with out of scale, out of character. Few key terms that you'll see here and that we have to keep in mind were scale, context, streetscape, every block is unique, natural features, some positive and some negative, but certainly an important factor in West Vancouver, and diverse, as is described in the Metro 2040 OCP. The approach that we took, we started off with, we weren't sure if we really knew all of West Vancouver, so we did a bus tour. We put everybody in a bus and toured around and actually visited different neighborhoods and learned about them. And again, very fortunate to have Steve Nichols, the former planner, who would describe each of the neighborhoods and some of the individual differing covenants that actually occur with some neighborhoods. We then went from there, we each took a neighborhood, toured it, talked to residents, looked around, and presented that neighborhood to the group so that we actually looked at. I did Cedardale. I walked around, I found some really interesting areas. There's one area that received a neighborhood award way back when. It's up for demolition, unfortunately, rezoning. There is Spurway in there, but there also is a really good neighborhood feel. I saw things that you don't normally see anymore. Hockey nets, kids playing hockey on a cul-de-sac. Wonderful, and we remember the good days when those actually happened. We came up with several assumptions again along the way. The importance of property values. For almost all of us, our home is our greatest asset and will always be so. And we want to protect that and recognize that. This is very important and hard to accept. Tastes and styles change but cannot be legislated. You cannot tell somebody how to paint their house. You cannot say, this is an ugly house, change it. We do not have, as they do in some communities, all houses must be the same color or the same size. So that's difficult to keep in mind. The concern for impact of climate change, and we learned a lot about municipal and provincial regulations, what we could change and what we couldn't. And in some cases, there's a provincial regulation that overrides the municipal. Bottom line is we became very educated in a lot of these factors. Certainly I did. So problems that we came up with, with the OCP. We refer to the OCP and written in the OCP is to ensure that new single-family dwellings respect neighborhood character by reviewing regulations controlling the scale of single-family buildings and applying and updating built form guidelines as relevant in respect to neighborhood character and context, streetscape, and natural features. So it is mentioned in the OCP. And also for Metro 2020, the OCP there to encourage a diverse range of housing options respecting neighborhood character by controlling the scale of new single-family dwellings. Again, that word scale. So, as we were brainstorming, it took a long time for us to narrow it down. We wanted to validate the problems and identify the problems. We originally started with 10 and worked that down to actually 4. So our 4 topics were building size, landscaping, neighbor consideration, and housing diversity. We did a significant amount of, and through all of this again, we reminded ourselves that the recommendations should be achievable. We did not want to be on any committee where nothing came of it, and a little back up on that one. There were many other task forces and committees over the last 50 years on neighborhood character. None of them had any success or impact, so we didn't want to be a part of that. So we needed to be achievable, implementable. We met regularly with staff to find out what could be done under legislation and being practical and legislatable. We met with stakeholder groups. We met with realtors, builders, landscape architects, staff and council. We met with different neighborhood groups. We met with the Historical Society, and we got feedback from each of those stakeholder groups. What came back from those was, again, the more emphasis on reducing visible size. There's measurable size and there's visible size. It's visible size that I think most of us are concerned with. More emphasis on the diversity of housing types, suites and coach houses, which are being talked about a lot now. A pretty new topic in West Vancouver. And you may not know, we're all very surprised. Previously to when we started this, I believe there were only 4 or 6, I'm not sure, coach houses in all of West Vancouver. So that's a concept that really had not been approached here. And we fine-tuned our, with the feedback for practicality and so on. We did, we did a draft report. There was a survey questionnaire that I'm sure a lot of you filled out. We had advertisements in the North Shore News, videos, live interactive webinars, and again, more refinements and clarifications. Principles, again, we wanted to support the quality of life and to retain property values. We wanted to size houses appropriately for their lots and generally encourage smaller houses. And there's a FAR floor area ratio is based on the house and the lot. One of our recommendations that was passed is to reduce the FAR from 0.35 to 0.30. Fine-tuning sounds like a small amount, but it definitely is having some impact there. We wanted to focus on greenery and landscaping. Again, a very important part of West Vancouver. Some people are very, as you wander around, you'll see people who are lifelong gardeners and take care of their properties. There are those who have professional gardeners coming in, but we wanted some uniformity and more emphasis on greenery. We wanted to encourage diversity, again, while retaining a detached house feel to neighborhoods. A lot of this sounds fuzzy, but that's the way we had to come up with this to make it sensible. So along with this, what we generally came up with, and I recommend if you haven't, spend some time looking through our report. It's on the website. It is much bigger than this and very technical in many ways, but we tried to make the main recommendations fairly user-friendly. So what we have is a lot of small changes that will enhance neighborhood character, not major changes, tweaking. I'm going to go back a little bit. Okay, so some of the changes. Sorry. No, okay, I'm going to do this from my notes. Main changes again, we offered a bonus for suites and coach houses. Somebody was just asking about that. We want to encourage suites and coach houses. It's a gentle way of increasing density. So with the suites and coach houses, if you are going to be building and want to put a suite in, you get a 500 extra square feet of density for adding a suite. You do not need to rent it, but it could be there for future generations. that is a bonus over and above the 30.30. 800 square feet for a coach house is the density that's allowed there. So some of that is actually being taken up for what we understand right now. We made changes to the highest building face, and to roof height. There was another change about enclosed spaces that were not included. A big house that actually has a courtyard in the middle is now a part of it. So there's a lot of detail and technical stuff that I'm not really going to get into. So the main areas, again, were reducing the floor area ratio to 0.30 and changing some of the other features. Sorry, Heather. Okay, here we go. Easier subdivision of large lots. This one always made sense to me personally. There are a lot of big lots. One of the members of the committee lived near a large lot. The owners of the large lot wanted to subdivide it, and it was almost impossible to get it done. So guess what? They built a monster house. So we really want to encourage subdivision of lots. There's a formula on that. Again, I'm not getting into the technical stuff. For a certain size lot to be able to be subdivided and an encouragement to do so. That provides a lot of new housing, again, with a single family feel. The density bonus, 500 square feet for a suite and 800 square feet for a coach house. Easier, more predictable. Along with this, if somebody's going to be renovating their home and wants to add, and it's already at the max floor area ratio, and they want to add 500 square feet for a suite, they can do so. So we grandfathered those who are currently. We actually were trying to encourage renovation versus demolition and rebuild. Always, again, by trying to keep a single family feel. So a couple of things in summary. On July 27th, 2021, the final recommendation was presented to Mayor and Council, unanimously passed. It is actually the agenda for the last council meeting included rewriting some of the bylaws, many of which are a result of our work and our recommendations. The planning staff was very helpful meeting with us, talking about things that they felt would be hard to follow through. The other area for consideration that is hard to wrestle with is neighbor consideration. We talked about that a lot. We feel it's really important for a new build or a rental that the neighbors should be consulted. However, you can't do that. It's just not practical, it's not enforceable, they put up a sign and so on. So there were a few things, and with the greenery, we were recommending improving boulevards. So the district is coming up with some best practices brochures, and those handouts will be available for people who are applying for permits to rent a building. And it's just a way of encouraging that. People have rights, and it clearly was not going to be practical to be able to force somebody to talk to their neighbors about it. It's best practice. Many do that, many don't. Another note for you, we actually received an award. It was really exciting. On July 2022, we were invited, Tom and I, along with the planners, were invited to go to Whistler, and we received the Gold Award from the Planning Institute of BC for community-led approach to neighborhood character. And I had asked Jim Bailey, the Director of Planning, for just some general progress on what's happening. It's happening. That's the main thing. He's described, and again, no details here, it's too soon. There are more creative housing options. People are thinking a little bit more about being creative within the new guidelines. There are more subdivisions to smaller lots. People are going that route. There are certainly many more coach house and suite applications, which will bring new housing stock to us in these single-family zones. And more renovations as opposed to new builds, which certainly saves the existing character and also saves demolition material from heading to the landfill. So again, just a general overview of the work that we did, the recommendations that we came through. And I'm personally feeling very happy that things are actually happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So questions for Nancy, any questions at all?
Don't ask me technical questions. That is not my role.
Any questions? Yes.
Not a question, I mean, us was great too, but Nancy, that was very important. I went to one of the meetings that I think you really summarized, because I know how intensely your group worked. I just appreciate your presentation this evening.
I hope you got the gist of it, I think that's the point.
There's a question at the back here.
Do you see your work being represented in this auction document that we're seeing?
That's a tough one, and I'm gonna be honest, I have not followed that carefully. I did take part in one of the Zoom meetings and realized I personally need to read more on it. It's tough because we were always directed to single-family zone, single-family home. We had discussions about that. We talked about concepts like townhouses and row houses, and we kind of welcomed the concept. Sorry. We welcomed the concept of townhouses, row houses, but we had to stick with the single-family zoning. I don't feel, I can give a personal opinion because I need to read more about it. Yes?
Do you feel that planning is following the recommendations you've done?
Yes, they are. It's complicated and complex. Everything we tried to do, we found that. We met with them very often, and we wanted to know, can we do this, can we not? Is it going to happen? It's not going to happen right away. They have to rewrite bylaws, which is complicated, and that is what is happening now. So when somebody is coming in for a permit or it is according to the newer guidelines. It's a work in progress.
So the recommendations have not really been implemented at the bylaw level?
Some are. I have not had an official update. Some are. The last council agenda meeting included some of that. I don't know if anyone here went to that. There was a whole lot of bylaw stuff on that one.
The only reason I ask, other than Cedardale, used to be basically bungalows, I can use that single level. They're within 2 streets of where I live. There is at least 6 houses, what I would call monster houses.
I've seen them. I walk by them.
Out of character with the neighborhood.
Those are very large lots. I walk through that area and I wince, I have to say that, thinking all that we did. But they are legally built according to, because they are large lots, they're able to be built. There's nothing you can do. That's one of those cases where you can't legislate taste. I would have liked to have seen something different, but they are large lots, they can build large homes. As I said, it's that visible thing that we came to realize is why many of us wince and go, we called them embassies. But they're allowed to do that.
So they're running at the 30% or 35%?
They will be built under the new ones will be 0.30.
Will be, but the ones that have been built today.
Yes, up to today it was 35, yeah. So 5% will help, it'll help.
I personally think that the secondary suites, they should allow slightly bigger, because I do own a small apartment building in Burnaby, which we got suites about 630 square feet. It's quite small, and 500 square feet.
Oh no, clarification. It doesn't mean a 500 square foot lot or an 800, or a suite, or an 800 square foot coach house. That is the bonus that, that you get for building. So if you are allowed a 3,500 square foot house, and you want to put a suite in, you are allowed 4,000 square feet of building. It's up to you how much you want to put into the suite. It's significant. It does help.
Question way at the back.
Where are those 3 houses we were talking about?
Sorry, which?
What, the 3 houses, the 3 monster houses, where are they located?
Oh, they're not in, I'm still in this mode myself. I walk a lot. Remember, we all started walking in COVID. I still walk the hood all the time. And I've watched lots that were in houses torn down, and I'm going, we tried, but we can only go so far. The one that you were talking about, I believe, is Cedardale. Yeah, and I know, it's, you cannot legislate taste. It's a hard pill to swallow, but that's the way it is. Mhm.
Yeah, so I've read the report, I think it's a great report. I'm not convinced that staff are actually supporting this in action, because if staff would be, there would be no reason why they would support spot zoning in single-family homes to build duplexes.
Again, I can't speak to that, zoning and duplexes, I'm not up to. All I can say is we met regularly with staff, and they were very clear what could be done and what couldn't. And that was very educational for us. There are a lot of limits, but they were very supportive in our recommendations. Yes?
Another question?
Now, if the objective is to try and find more places for residents of West Van to stay in the community, what are the regulations about using extra suites, laneway homes, etc., for short-term rentals like Airbnb?
Again, I can't answer that. My understanding is that at the moment, West Van does not allow Airbnb. We know they're happening all over.
That's wrong.
Yeah.
Effectively, they're not enforcing the law.
Yes, exactly. So that's another issue, and that one needs to be brought up in a different way. That's going to be an interesting offshoot of suites, yes. Yeah. Our hope is that the suites will be built, and that eventually they will be rented to bring more people in. Yes?
What's the average size of a lot in Ambleside?
I'm not good at the technical stuff. Read the report. Sorry, I don't know that. They're all different. There are 4,000 square foot lots. There are a few of those, and there are 12,000 square foot lots. There's a big variety. You can look all that up, actually.
So if you have, let's say you have a 60 by 100, I don't know if there are any, but that's 6,000 square feet. You build a new house, 2,100 square feet. Who can afford to build a house for 2,100 square feet?
That is one of the big issues. I asked the planners, is anybody building smaller homes? And they said, to be quite honest, they can't remember when the last one was built that wasn't max. I found that sad. We don't, but this is our culture, this is our society. And if you're paying all that money, people are going to build the bigger homes.
Does that include garage space?
Those are our accessory buildings. There's another formula for accessory buildings and what is allowed. We didn't really change those. We tried to do things like not make, when you look at a house, again, it's visible. When all you see is the big outside of the drive-in garage, we tried to put some bonuses for changing that so it's not so obvious. There are so many details into trying to limit things so that it does not look out of scale, it does not look ominous, but very tough to do.
Any other questions? No? Okay, well, thank you very much. And that was very good. Thank you. So, last but not least, is my friend Maureen O'Brien. So, just a little bit of background. Maureen is an experienced publicist with a background in communications and marketing. She's the executive director of the Ambleside Business Improvement Association since March 2020. In the short time Maureen has been with ADRA, it's a bit of a mouthful that, they have been recognised by Business Improvement Association of British Columbia and the BC Economic Development Association for their creative initiatives. One of the ones that probably a lot of people do know about is if you see some of the new artwork on site of buildings in Ambleside, I think some of it's really helped invigorate it. It's great to see that. So, with further ado, Maureen's going to talk about an initiative they had called Imagine Ambleside. And I think it's a very exciting initiative. They get lots of feedback from people and lots of ideas of what people would like to see in the commercial district in Ambleside. So over to you, Maureen. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I just got to get through this. No. Hi, thanks for having me. Can everyone hear me? I'm not used to talking into a mic. So yes, I started in March of 2020, 3 days before the pandemic shut everything down. So it was interesting times. I spent the first couple of months just trying to deliver my way. It was kind of a blessing that we had the pandemic, because it gave me an opportunity to look at what had been done already with the BIA, the previous executive director. Then just trying to help our businesses stay open. We kind of did a rebrand and came up with It Takes a Village to Make a Village, to try to get people to remember that we do live in these villages in Ambleside and Underig, and we need the community support. And it was successful because we didn't have any businesses that closed because of the pandemic. So I think that was pretty good. Then in September of 2020, or August of 2020, we started Imagine Ambleside, and we rented a room where the old dog zoo used to be at 15th and Marine, and we set up shop there. And we came up with questions about what people wanted to see in our community, hotel, kind of restaurants, what kind of stores, what kind of feel they wanted. And we had a great big board that people could come in and put pins of what they wanted to see and where they wanted to see it. And we also curated images from all over the place to give people some incentive rather than a blank slate, much like they've done with the LAP, to start the ball rolling and get you thinking about what you'd like to see. We did the same thing to give people an idea, because sometimes a blank slate is just a little bit overwhelming. And this was our map, which was, like I say, a great big 8x6 map that came in, and mostly down by the waterfront there. That's all brewery and oyster bar. I think brewery was probably one of the most popular ones people wanted to see. So out of that, we came up with these community priorities, which is to, and I can't read it that well from here, to have diverse options in our retail. And I know years ago, Ambleside was that. There were great shops here, and over the course of time, they move away, they close up shop, they retire, whatever the case may be, and it has been maybe not so much retail focus that has moved into Ambleside, and that's for a variety of reasons. Aesthetically, we wanted to keep it more of that village, the community, that village feeling of being charming and welcoming. Again, vibrancy through the diversity of different retail, different restaurants, mom and pop shops, wine bars, and keep it so that it feels like a neighborhood destination that you want to go to, whether you live here or you're coming to visit. So these were some of the biggest one we had that people want to see was a cheese shop or fromagerie. I have a fromagerie, a fabulous place that's already existing just outside of Victoria that desperately wants to open in West Vancouver. We can't find a location for it. I showed them 3 different spaces and none of them are suitable to what they need. So they're ready to come over, but we just have to find space for them. Boutique Hotel, overwhelmingly support for Boutique Hotel in Ambleside. 5 floors, 7 floors, somewhere in there, because Boutique Hotel has to have at least 70 rooms to be viable. So again, if we can find a location that can accommodate that, then in there we can have a jazz bar, a nice restaurant, a wine bar, some more community space, because there's really no place, maybe in KB, but where do you have a wedding in Ambleside, or any kind of family gathering? We need a hotel. Lots of restaurant questions. Biggest one was farm to table, Mexican and Greek. So I've got a Greek restaurant that is ready to open probably in a year. Again, I have to find him a location. So we need the space. Everyone wants to see more boutique shops. They want to be more like 4th Avenue. I'm not so sure about that anymore, what's going on 4th, but just a destination, a bookstore, boutiques, ceramic shops, clothing, that sort of thing. A lot of the comparison was we want to be more like Underig. So a wine bar, a lot of people like alcohol. So that goes without saying. A brewery again, and I'm pleased to say that the previous council did pass a bylaw, so or rezoned, I should say, so that we can have a brewery within Ambleside or Underig. Again, we don't have the the space for one. That's a big issue. There was a couple of spaces that were possible, but the landlord didn't want to sign a long-term lease, and most breweries need quite a few years to establish themselves. The charm of Ambleside, I think we all agree that the community wants to feel that village feel, where you can just hop in and out, take advantage of that West Coast beachfront, and great little shops where we can not just for our own residents, but attract people to come here from elsewhere. Wider sidewalks through Ambleside, yes. Wider sidewalks means that we can have larger awnings. It rains so much here, so it would be great to have places where it's a little bit wider, where the sidewalks are a little bit more even and flat, and it's safer for people to walk, roll, whatever it is that you have to get around. And it would also encourage us to be able to have more outdoor dining. It is in desperate need of a refresh. This is a sad photo. Fortunately, that wall doesn't look like that anymore, and I have a photo later on of this wall. But people do describe parts of Ambleside as looking shabby, run down, tired, and dirty. So even as a Band-Aid solution, while we're going through the whole LEP process, we can offer, and we're currently offering this to our members, if they want to put up a new facade, get a new awning, a new sign, paint their door, paint around their building, we're offering some compensation to them to help offset that cost. Because those are just little Band-Aid solutions that could help things look good in the short term. By doing what people have asked for in our survey, we can maintain the charm of Ambleside. I know I use the word charm a lot, but really, Ambleside should be more charming than it is. We can create it as a distinct place for both our commercial property owners and our businesses and our residents. The waterfront, we included the waterfront, even though it's not within our boundaries, because it was a question that a lot of people wanted input on. And we did ask Hollywood Sailing Club for some input, and so I would say going back, I think it's 94% of the people that completed our survey came from Ambleside or West Vancouver, and the other 6% were from Hollywood. And so they do spend a lot of time in Ambleside, and they're like, well, we'd like to have a place to, after we go out for a sail, or after we, or drop our kids off to class, a place to go and have a glass of wine and relax while we wait for them. A small passenger ferry from downtown Kitts was very, very popular. I think years ago, probably before I was around here, you guys had one here for the Olympics. I know there's some logistic problems with the tides and that sort of thing, but that's, I don't know what else. It's just, this is what people have said they wanted. So, getting there. That was the compilation of our survey. So while we wait for the LAP, we just look at projects that come in based on their own merit. We have encouraged the last council and this council to expedite the LAP. If you look back, and I think staff did a great job of including all the studies that have been done for the last 70, 75 years, it's pretty much the same thing. They want charming, they want shops, they want it to be places to engage the waterfront. So there's no reason that this LAP can't be completed in a timely fashion. It shouldn't take years and years to do. What else do we do? We're really pushing for the good neighbor bylaw. We do monthly cleanups. We really encourage our owners to do cleaning up. Again, going back to offering compensation to businesses if they want to give their place a paint job or a little bit of a facelift. I think I've had 7 businesses take advantage of it. So hopefully through the summer we start to see a little bit of change. And then we did get by the rezoning of Ambleside area to restrict the amount of banking, financial, and currency exchange, nail salons, real estate offices to a maximum of 20% per block. It's something that I'm still working with staff on, because, 20% per block is great, but perhaps we should have asked for maybe 10. So, we're working on that, it's work in progress. So yeah, and they have been really great about expediting permits. It's been much quicker for businesses to get their permits lately. The staff has been very supportive of that. We had a couple of pop-ups approach us about some empty space in Dunderry, and staff have been really good about pushing those forward right away. We have had done, as Graham mentioned, 5 murals in Ambleside. We have another one in the works, and perhaps one in Dunderry. So I think those have done a lot to create a little bit of vibrancy in Ambleside. And we have worked on creating some new lighting. So yeah, that's with all the trees on Marine Drive. I know that some people like that, some people don't. But overall, it has made the area much safer. I've had police officers say to me how much nicer it is at 3 o'clock in the morning when they're doing the drive about, that it's a little bit brighter. I've had staff at some of the local restaurants that leave there after dark saying it's much nicer walking to the bus stop. So I think overall it creates a nice vibrancy for the business area. And then these are just the before and after of some of our buildings. So it's kind of hard to see on this, but hopefully most of you have been able to see them in person. And these ones here, that's at the Village Fish Market, our beautiful mermaid, and then on the back of the Walker Building. Because one of the things people wanted to do was activate laneways a little bit more. And I started by asking the owner of that building, can we paint the back of the building so that maybe we can activate the laneway. It has to start somewhere, so that's where it started. And then so from there, we have gone into Ambleside Imagined. And now we're working closely with staff, and the ADRA board had a meeting with the staff regarding the LEP about what we can create. And we want to create a 15-minute village, a place where people can live and they can work and they can walk everywhere. That if you can work from home, walk places, do your shopping, restaurants, whatever the case may be, that's going to help with traffic on the roads. We currently don't have a lot of places for people looking to downsize to go, and we don't have a lot for young people. Everyone says, why can't we be more like Lower Lonsdale? Well, we want a little bit of that vibrancy, but we don't want to become how crazy Lower Lonsdale is on a Friday night. So there should be a happy medium there where you can go and be able to live and work and play and have fun and have a few drinks and walk home quite easy. Again, our findings from the survey show us that the community wants more vibrancy, shops, restaurants, outdoor space, better lighting, better infrastructure. And in order to do that, we need to curate the businesses that the community wants to see. And by having a more livable commercial area, we can do all of the things that everyone has asked for in Imagine Ambleside. That's it. No, I guess everything's perfect. No one has questions.
Any questions? Or is it very bad?
Have you worked with staff to maybe try to limit some of the size of their commercial units, create that vibrancy that you're talking about, like be more like that, right?
Sorry, the word is.
You mentioned that a lot of people mentioned you want to be more like Dunderry, even like commercial or Main Street. They're usually smaller commercial units, which help with that vibrancy and finding those chairs and the cheesemonger and that sort of thing. Have you worked with planning staff to maybe curate that?
No, because that's not planning's role. I try to curate businesses. Every time I'm somewhere or I think of a business that would fit in. Actually, part of the problem is that a lot of the places in Ambleside are too small. 800 square feet isn't quite big enough for a business to want to open. So there's really big spaces like we have in Grosvenor, and then there's really small spaces, but we really don't have a lot of vacancy in Ambleside. We don't, there's none that I can currently think of. I've got an expert here. And there's none off the top of my head that I can currently think of. So I do work closely with planning and permits and bylaws to try to make sure that whoever does come in fits within that 20%. And I get them to check and double check if it's somebody that we maybe don't want in there.
Looking at some of those sketches you had up, I didn't really see, I saw a lot of sidewalks and planters, I didn't see any roads. As someone that doesn't live within walking distance of Ambleside and an area that has a Pauling bus service, I would love to support businesses in Ambleside and Dunderry. But my concern, pardon?
Use the microphone, please.
I'd love the opportunity to support the businesses in Ambleside and Dunderry, but unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot more resident-only parking creeping up from Marine Drive. That concerns me, that it becomes exclusivity to the people in that area. And then where do people who want to come down for 2 or 3 hours, have dinner, do some shopping? I mean, we are taxpayers, we pay a lot. We pay for those facilities and upgrades in that area, but we're not really being allowed to have as much access. I'm concerned that when I see drawings with wider sidewalks and more planters and the laneways become less usable, how are people outside that 5-6 block radius gonna be able to come in and support those small businesses? Because personally, I don't wanna be supporting, Park Royal all the time. They get enough from everyone else. I'd like to support small businesses. So is there going to be a concern for people like us that can't walk there, that there will be narrower roadways, less parking, less access, more resident parking?
Within the BIA boundaries, and again, that goes from Bellevue up to Clyde, north south, and then from 13th to 19th, and then we break off, and then it's at 22nd, and then again into Dunderry. So within our business boundaries, there's no parking, aside from the time, there's no parking restrictions. There's no resident only restrictions. And it's free after 6, I think, in almost every place. Or not free, but no time limit after 6. So if there is new development that comes in, I think for sure from the BIA perspective, parking is going to be a huge part of that. We know from surveys that I've taken with our members and our business owners, people use their cars. They use their cars to go to the businesses. So while if a new business is being developed or a new property is being developed, it's great to have some residential above for those people that live there. That does not mean that we take away parking for the people that want to come into our community to shop and support other businesses.
The only thing I guess is I should have addressed this to the other woman that spoke earlier. When you start having more duplexes, triplexes, multi-story, 2-3-story housing, laneway basement suites, you can have a duplex that all of a sudden you could have 8 cars that need to park on the street, and I pretty much know that it's going to be just a matter of time where it'll be resident parking with permit only.
Yeah, there's no resident like single family homes within our boundaries, so I can't speak.
I know, I understand that,
Yeah.
but what I'm saying, it's not just your problem. I guess it would be something that previously, when they were talking about how do we get more housing in, it needs to be somehow communicated between the groups together. How are we gonna make this a workable community for everybody in the community?
That's a good question. I don't think there's an easy answer for that, unless.
More bicycles.
Oh, yeah.
Is there someone else over there discussing?
I just want to support the woman who was just speaking here. We're from Meadows Avenue up the hill a little bit and have to walk down, so we're paying taxes for the services happening down on Ambleside. But what's been happening since about 2018 is the road slowdowns on Fulton and Bellevue and on.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but you actually have a question.
Yes, I do.
Okay, please.
On Inglewood and the closure of the lane on Marine Drive, obviously the traffic goes somewhere. So when you did your planning for, we're actually picking people up off the road very regularly who are getting hit, brushed by cars, children in a 12-foot lane with big trucks. It's very, very dangerous, and the police aren't able to look after it. So when you did your planning and you closed the lane on Marine Drive, what did you do to consider the impacts on the other taxpayers in West Vancouver? Pardon me? Non-cyclists? Well, non-cyclists and even children cycling to school and children walking to school, and elderly people who.
I'm sorry, are you talking about Dundray? Are you talking about Dundray?
Dundray, yeah, the section particularly between 21st.
Yeah, I think we're mostly talking about the local area plan, and I was just referring to Imagine Ambleside. If you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to.
This is not, this is Upper Ambleside. In fact, Upper Ambleside and all the way through and down.
What lane closure are you speaking about?
There was the lane closure on Marine Drive.
So can I, sorry to interrupt, but maybe you could, it's a very long question you've got, maybe you want to talk to Maureen afterwards, because I think there's a few other people that have some questions as well, if you don't mind. Now, there's someone at the back there. Who else has a question? Yeah.
I have a simple question. I received a notice about parking now having to be paid out of Horseshoe Bay, and that within, if that was successful, they're going to then start charging for parking in the parks in the along Ambleside, like Lawson Park, things like that. So the parking that is in those parks has to. A lot of those people come and shop just there. So if that happens, then as the lady said, you know, all of a sudden we are now paying, or people who are coming into the community have to pay for a service that we didn't use.
Please use the microphone.
Can you just repeat the question from the
Nobody else can hear what's going on.
The question is, I received a notice that the parks out in Horseshoe Bay were now going to charge parking, $3.50 an hour, which is quite expensive. And that if that was supposed to happen as of next year, I think, and that if that was going to be successful, then the same thing was going to happen in the parks along the seawall, like Lawson Park and the park, and
Just Ambleside this year.
so if that is going to happen, then the people who are, you will be able to get a resident permit. So the idea is that anyone who is in the West Van can get a resident permit. How many people will actually do that, I don't know. But the question is then people who are coming into the community to support the businesses that you're trying to encourage, they're not going to want to come because they have to pay $3.50 an hour, $7 for a couple of hours parking, $10 for, coming to $10, $12 to add to their dinner. What happens then?
So most of I think what they're looking at outside, like Horseshoe Bay, Whitecliff, and Lighthouse, is they'll start with Ambleside, Dundray areas will be down the line.
Right.
And it will be the parks, not the business area. Our concern will be that the people that don't want to pay at the parks are going to come into the business area. So, and park there, and take out the parking, because it won't be paid parking in the business area.
It'll never happen.
Not if I have anything to say about it. I think some council might feel different, but I will fight for parking for our residents. We cannot have paid parking in our business area if Park Royal offers free parking. It won't work, and it will be the death of our commercial area. And I will. I'm not sure who was first. Go different buttons.
When you talk about the village feel, what are you looking at for height in the Ambleside area along Marine Drive?
Move the mic closer, please.
She just asked about what we thought about for height for the village. housing, that's kind of out of, our focus is on the businesses. I think we have to look at every project on their own merit. As far as the board goes, the BIA, we don't have a say on height, if it's 8 stories, if it's 7 stories, if it's 3 stories. Of course, if you want to maintain that village feel, we're looking at a lower rise. I don't think anybody wants to see towers in Ambleside or West Vancouver, especially in the business area, especially in the commercial area. If you want to build up as you go higher and the elevation's a bit different, that's again out of our wheelhouse. But for within our commercial boundaries, we want it to stay so it feels like a village.
Thank you.
Instead of moving out.
I'm sorry, there's another chat.
And they're gonna ask to do something.
How receptive is planning to permanent sidewalk covering so that when it's raining, customers don't get wet?
Yes, and that is where if we have wider sidewalks, it allows us to have bigger awnings, because currently right now, a lot of our businesses don't have awnings. And many of our buildings are so old, they don't have the infrastructure to put up those types of awnings that we need in order to protect people. So we do live in a rainy community that, you got 8-10 months a year here where it rains.
You could structure something that new building specifications would have to have permanent sidewalk cover.
Yes, and so if we're any new builds, that's
a tax incentive for other owners to do that. It's just a structuring deal.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
I just want to say, I think you're doing a really good job, because I love the lights on Marine Drive. And I like the murals you've done, or have done.
Thank you.
Maureen, I'm just kind of curious about a parking garage. Is there active discussions going on about that?
Not in any place that is currently. I think any new development would have parking, underground parking. So any place that they're looking at for a new development would have to include underground parking. There's no building right now where we could dig down underneath it.
Thank you. You mentioned about improving the walkability area of Denbury, of Ambleside. I live up on Duchess and 15th. I walk down there a lot. I don't walk that fast, but I got to be very nimble to get across most of those streets in the time limit allowed. Only if I get wherever it starts. And is there anything being done about this? We have a whole different system. We have some with buttons that don't work. We have some with buttons that do something. Other ones you don't need a button. And the cars have more time to get through the intersection than the people do. And then they do anything about that. It's dangerous, particularly at 15th and Ambleside, 15th and Marine Drive.
I agree, it is. I would like to see, I kind of liked during COVID when we didn't have to touch the buttons and it was all automatic.
I asked them to leave that.
Yeah, and I have as well, and it is on my list of things that I'm working with staff about. It's a really, really, really long list, so we'll get through it. But I just keep pushing, so I will, because I agree. I think we are very car-centric, and I think we need to focus a lot more on pedestrians.
I asked that same question, I don't know Mike here, but I was told that cars must get through in a timely manner.
Yeah, because they're afraid it'll back up and back up and back up, but they're not, yeah. So it's on my list. Agreed, I agree.
So the question is how does the community reconcile the prime shopping area being on the busiest street, full of construction trucks, lumber trucks, concrete trucks, on and on and on, and an attitude within the engineering department that wants to move it all through quicker rather than slower?
Again, that is something that hopefully when we complete the LEP, we can resolve some of those issues. Because if we want to make Ambleside and Dunderave more village-like shopping, we have to just it has to slow down. I am advocating, and Councillor Cassidy is our council liaison, knows I am advocating for at least slow streets on Bellevue, Clyde, and Marine Drive in Dunderave. Because it just, cars are, if it's a 50-kilometer zone, people are going 70.
It's called the law of friction. There are lots of little tricks to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe, hopefully.
So yeah, again, it's on the list.
Sorry, no, yeah, go ahead. I don't even need the mic. The way I talk, I think everybody
Well, Ray
can
will
hear
want
me.
you to have a mic.
To have one.
Okay. All right, good. I don't really want to dwell on this too much. You may have answered the question earlier, but I think most people in this room have heard the word charm, seaside village atmosphere, and that forms a sort of core vision for how they would like to see Ambleside moving forward. I've read through this LAP document. I don't see the word charm at all. I don't even see the words village. So I'm wondering, with what you've come up with in Imagine Ambleside, which I think is a really great document, do you see Imagine Ambleside in any of the options that we're looking at the moment?
I see Imagine Ambleside in what will be the recommendation to council from staff. It might not be in what staff has presented in the options, but we are pushing really hard for staff to listen to what the community has said. And that's not the BIA that came up with that, that is the community that came up with that, with over 1,000 people surveyed. And I don't know how many people they had at their LOPs. I think they had, I don't know, 6 or 8 workshops with 12 people at each one. I feel like the reach that we got in 2020 really needs to be taken into consideration.
I see many dated buildings on Marine Drive, and instead of pushing forward north of the Marine Drive and having new buildings, why they don't try to encourage those owners or whatever on the Marine Drive to add the floors and make them more beautiful looking, because they're dated and not nice looking.
So with the LAP, it will allow us to, or allow staff to rezone, and so currently it's zoned for, I think, 37.5 feet and maybe up to 40 or 45, depending on the zoning. It's a matter of finding the developers that want to develop it. I think a lot of them have been kind of waiting. It's kind of notorious that it's been difficult to get things done in West Vancouver. And without the LAP, there was no guidelines. So if we have these guidelines, then developers, property owners know this is what we are allowed to do, this is what's acceptable. Now we can come forward with a plan to say, this is what we'd like to do. So we do hope, there's a lot of buildings in Ambleside, especially between 13th and 16th that are end of life, 13th and 15th that are end of life.
Sorry, one last question. We're nearly running out of time here.
Again, it's perplexing because my question is that with your plan for density is being forced on, and how are you going to get an economic development in this community unless you get the value per square foot in rental or practice not somehow? And what seems to be playing here is that you say there's an LAP coming down, but how can we deal with 3 options asked for by our council. When we have professionals who could probably come up with one, and then you can modify one to fit the bill. And is that not the reason why we're not getting the development? I think it is. 3 plans only add to confusion. 2 is the maximum of confusion.
I think we should, I'll try and, I think the answer to that is these plans were developed, there's no,
That's not me.
it's not Maureen that developed the 3 plans. I mean, the 3 plans came from the district, and these were put out for discussion purposes. And they're not, I mean, I've been assured that they're not locked in stone, that there's potential to change. They're just 3 options for the potential development. Now, the problem is, a little bit, is that those 3 options are all designed to fit 1,000 to 1,200 more housing units in Ambleside, and therefore you get the density that you'll see in these plans. But this is not, this is not Maureen's plan. This is a plan that came from district and district staff, and your point is valid. It is the district and the district staff. So I just want to sort of wrap up, because I think probably people, summer, they probably want to get out and home, but they haven't had dinner yet. So I want to just thank our speakers again. I think we had some very different, interesting information, challenging information, starting with Klaus, and then hearing from Nancy about what we can build today in single-family lots, and then Maureen with Imagine Ambleside. So I'd just like another round of applause, please. Volunteers here who organized this evening. So thank you to you guys. It's much appreciated. These are all volunteers who spent the time to put the furniture out and do everything for this evening to get it ready. The presentations from tonight and the link to the 3 possible visions, and our possible visions from the district will be posted on the ADRA website. There is material at the back. You can take this free. Some of that material is at the back, and some of ADRA has submitted to the mayor and council in terms of some of their views. That's all in the back if you want to take it. And I also just like to do a little plug. ADRA depends on volunteers, and it costs you if you'd like to join and keep up to date and get more information on what's happening in the community. Then for the princely sum of $10 a year, which is 2 Starbucks, you can be a member and receive that information and add to the mailing list. It's not a huge financial commitment, and I encourage you to do that. The future of our community over the next 20 to 30 years will likely be decided by the end of this year. For residents of Ambleside, this will define what can be built right next to you. Please do take time to let our mayor and council know how you see the future of Ambleside. These are 3 versions. If you don't like them, you tell them what you would like. And it's a hard thing to do, but I think it's important for residents to get involved. You can call or write to any mayor and councillor and let them know your views. I think they really do want to hear from you. And if people don't give their views, then this process will evolve just through the mayor and council without the input from the community. And I can't emphasize how important it is, because this plan is going to define what Ambleside will be for the next 20, 30 years. So thank you all very much for coming.